Hello, molweni kwakhona. My name is Siwali. I'm a pastor of Light of God Fellowship. We are affiliates of the Baptist Union of South Africa. We reside in Wallerstein, in Kraaifontein. Our church building is there. If you would like to know that information. I have come up with another topic today. Again, because I want to treat the issues of Africa, or basically South Africa, or related to the Xhosa people. It's becoming bigger and bigger a little bit because certain things needs to be explained, and so people can understand. I'm doing this for mostly the Christian people and information, and that for other people also who can relate to this about the issues that surrounds Christianity and Africa. The issue today at hand is the issues of Africa. My conclusions, basically, lessons to be learned, about colonization. I've just got something that I want to put to you so that you can also grapple with and, get to think. So, one of the issues that kind of a question put to us as Christians is a question of colonization. It has become a big issue that the Africans struggle with that, and in so much that much blame is put on Christianity, and it's associated with Christianity mostly because of what people have perceived, that when the white people came in here, they brought all these things, and one of the things that they actually came with was Christianity, which they planted amongst the people, and it got to be known. So as a religion, it got to be questioned, and because of the people that also it came with, who had another agenda, to topple over Africa and to take over, to enslave Africa. We have a question now that is very much important to find if it is true. Is the Bible part of the agenda of colonization? Is Christianity part of the agenda of colonization? The way that I take it is that colonization is not a new concept in the world when it actually came, to Africans. History has got that nations were doing this thing to each other, since the time before Christ, and when Christ was actually here, it was still happening, and so it's not a new thing at all. We are not by any means inferior to others. We have gone through the same trials and testings, and so have faced, our enemies, who became friends, who, in a sense, help us to change. It has actually happened, and that we need it. That also, like any other continent that has actually continued to grow over this thing. We were the first powerful as Africans, the Kushites, because the Bible first talks about us as a race, as a color of people, you know, and then it comes down. So we come to realize who is who and what part and which part that we actually, kind of related with in the world. And then we see all in the history of things happening that also nations fought, nations oppressed each other, nations took over each other's land and enslaved other people. So it has happened. It has happened to Africans that they became the masters of other people at some point. It has become that the Africans were dominant in mind at some point, and they have used it not in a very good way. And so it actually evolved now. Maybe it went on to the others when they actually get their chance and they become dominant over the others, and it goes to the others. And so all over, this has been something that has been going all over the world. We have seen this happening. If you read any books, that there were wars, there were all of these things happening. Maybe the word colonization was not used that much to others more than it was actually now that we have come to realize. Because when you're talking about colonizing, you're talking about being made a colony, which is there's a bigger ruler and you become a sub place where the ruler actually makes you to live on his own rules. Now it is happening in political ideologies now, better ideologies and better, people who seem to be thinkers. They think for others, and others they find themselves working in their system. It's like that ideology now that is called democracy, and capitalism. It is not the make of many other people. It came from someone, some mind, and it was a vision that it came from some mind, and it was accepted by others, and others were willing to live under. So now in Africa, we're living under some of the countries under democracy, and so we can actually give it a name, at some point as to what is actually happening. Is this our thinking? Is it our way of doing things? Is it imposed on us in the way that we have? So there's still a lot of thinking that we actually need to go through as children of God and as just generally the people. Now, if I can give you just a history, a background history of a black person or the person of color or the dark-skinned person in the Bible. In the Bible, there's Ham, Shem, and Japheth. We fall under the sons of Noah, and Cush is the son of Noah, and then Cush gave birth to Nimrod, and then there was an expansion. There are other children also, but now if we follow what was because the name Cush is basically, it means black, it means dark-skinned person. It's what has been accepted by people of Nigeria, Niger, and then it goes up to Iran, Iraq, on that side, and coming back into Africa. And then Nimrod was mostly operating on that side in the Middle East. He was a black person who actually moved from where Noah was, and he actually resided right about on those sides. So there's a lot that we can actually say. There's, no, Nimrod is known of many things. That he actually was the one person who started to build up like a kingdom, an empire kingdom. And the Bible says he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. I don't think it speaks bad of him when it actually was a mighty hunter before the Lord. There was some kind of association between him and God. And he was this man who was a go-getter. And he had every skill of when he wants something, he would actually get it. And so, I mean, if that is the point, he was this kind of a guy who would actually, go and get something. So it is said that he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. So there was a relationship between him and the Lord in a sense. He was before the Lord. And what explains that and how we can explain that, for me, I take it as a positive thing. In so much that he actually at some point built up a tower of Babel. He got all of the people of his empire to make an architecture that would be a tower that goes up. He wanted her to go straight up to heaven. I think he was actually now hunting God. He wanted to find out where really, God was saying and what was this place that was called heaven. And the Bible speaks like good about it, except that God did not want people to actually come to the discovery of his dwelling at that point. There could be many reasons. Jesus Christ was not about to come at that time. It was too far. People could not be able to see God and to know that much about God. There was this distance of the fall that came through Adam. And so it was not that it was evil, that because of this man, God decided to give people different tongues and languages. So it was hard for them to be able to communicate. And so our project was abandoned because the first miracle that indicated to them the presence of God and the sovereignty of God appeared and happened at the time. And Nimrod could actually now, and other people know, that it was God. So it is recorded like it is God who actually, who thought so. So the person who records that God decided and he actually thought that he could not allow that. And so he made them to speak different languages. Now this is an interpretation of the writer. Whether God was angry or he was not angry about it, or he was just trying to dismiss this idea of Nimrod, of thinking that he can actually search for him and find him. Yeah, so we've got those kind of people. So we see that in the African mind, there's a strong thinking, because this guy decided, in a black person's mind, he decided to have an empire, and he created and make an organization that worked. And at some point, he then decided that he has conquered many of the nations, and the people were actually under him now. And say, okay, let's go look for God. And he did this Tower of Babel. In that organization of how is it going to happen, from building this thing, the architect and the architecture that was going to be involved in this, the people, the advisors, the consultation and everything, you can see. It's like the modern day type of thinking, which actually would tell you that this was actually a guy with superior mind, and none of the other guys with light skinned and all of those things, but this guy came up with that. Now you see the same thing that is actually happening closer in Egypt again as an indication. They made a proper organization of things in Egypt, and in some other nations were actually just, you hear that they were not as powerful as Egypt. Egypt was powerful, and Egypt was now in Africa. Also the remnants or the people who come from the Kushites, who are sons of Cush. And so Egyptians, they built an empire. It's recorded that they could actually calculate. It's evident when you look at the structure that they've actually built. Even people, the scientists today, they're just in an awe how that whole thing has been actually calculated into point, and how really, you find that the structure, it does many things, and it illuminates the minds of the scientists and the people, and then they come to understand that could not have actually happened without mathematics and science. Lots of people who've got deep brains and strong brains. So the African or the black or the people of color brain, you can hear, is actually a very strong brain. Now, they made a pyramid, as I've mentioned, and then again in the Bible they mention the priest of Midian in the region of Iraq, Iran. There again, who was actually a black person, a person of color. He was a priest, and seemingly he was a priest accepted to God, because when Moses ran from Egypt, he ran into the house of that guy and he worked for him, and then he married his daughter, and then at some point he left, but then the man had to bring him back his wife on the road. And then there's a story also about Moses. Moses was doing everything by himself, and this guy became a kind of an advisor, a counsel of Moses, to teach him, how to delegate, management skills, how to manage, courts, and how to manage the roles of the people and the court roles, and to train people who could actually be judges and deal with the matters that people are complaining about. So you can actually see, the mind of a black man, of a man of color, of what the people who are from that people, who could be said they are black. In the Bible again, you hear about the people, the merchants, from Africa, who actually went to trade. You can actually see these people, they knew about economy, and these people were Ethiopians. Ethiopia is not very far, from us here in South Africa. And so you can also hear the story of education, hieroglyphics, the writings. And this is the reason why Moses also wrote a book, because he got to be educated here in Africa, and he got to know how to really write and to communicate the writings of those days to the people that he was actually prepared here. And now you can also hear, that when Joseph explained went to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh actually asked him about the dream and everything. Pharaoh could actually recognize, good brains, and he actually believed what this meant, and he knew that, not necessary that you need to give a job to your cousin or to your brother for something. You give it to a person who can actually do the one and who's got the vision and who knows exactly what to. And then you see in the good heart of Pharaoh and the calculating heart, that is not free of racist and all of those kind of things. So yeah, there's lots of things, man, that you can actually pick up from the Bible that connect all cultures, especially our African culture, into the Bible. So you know that the African is in the Bible. God has never been opposed to the African person. He's never been fighting the African person or even, nasty to the African person because he's got a dark skin. No, not at all. In fact, the Bible tells us that when Miriam in Numbers, I think there's a book of Numbers chapter 12, Miriam and Aaron, they were actually discussing Moses, and many people speak of it as if these guys, they are saying that Moses is marrying or married to an inferior woman who was an African. It's a lie. Remember that these people, they come from a culture where they were slaves under the dark-skinned people. It's probably they were actually saying he thinks he's much better than them. Or, the argument is opposite of that. So he is now learned from them. He took the wife and now he is imposing things on them, and so they were angry with him, or they tried to rebel against him till God intervened. And God's intervention was on the part of Moses. And God did not have any discrimination of what Moses has actually done, or even judge Moses. That Moses, because he understood Moses was fed by these people. He grew up seeing them, their strength, and understanding that they've got such mental strength, these people, as much as organizational strength, and who best would you actually marry? To marry somebody who's actually lined up with the things of the priesthood, because this was a daughter of the Midian priest, and this person was actually dark, which actually dark in skin, which resembled to Moses, a kind of a high race, more educated than his people, stronger, were the masters and they were slaves at the time. So we have to understand, that they actually maybe were jealous because Zipporah was acting more kind of, and Moses was listening to Zipporah, and them really felt, awkwardly in, because, God was using Zipporah as a wife of Moses, a helper, a good help. I mean, what else would God do to you if He loves you and He is blessing you, than to bless you with a wife that is going to be able to build you up and you become a strong one, especially if you're looking after, and this happens, He's looking after God's people. And next to Moses is this woman who is actually dark-skinned, who has got all of this kind of the structure of the brain, and the mind, historically inherited from his people, down from Cush, Nimrod, and up to his father, um, you know, um, who was a priest. So basically, Zipporah was not estranged to all of these things that were actually happening, because he grew in the house of that, and then he's got so he was the right kind of person to be able to support Moses. Just to make it a point for you, I am not really believing that Moses had actually two wives. I think this was just one wife, and it's in there. It's talking about that they actually you know, looking at the dimension of the color of the king and the master, and her as a master, you know, who was actually associated with Moses, and they wanted to rebel now. And then God said, please just sit under Moses, and Moses will be able to carry things on. You know, I don't want to get into other things that are actually there. Again, you hear that Jesus, when Jesus was a small baby, and he was going to be killed by Herod, you know, in the mass killing of the children who were in his age, God said he must actually be taken to Egypt. And God, if he hated that much Egypt, I mean, why would he actually pick Egypt? And again, you could actually see also that it might be also that Jesus actually had a dark skin. You know, another preacher actually made that point clear. How would you hide a different child amongst the opposite? And you say you're hiding that child. If you take the child to the people of color, it might be that the child was that also having that darkness. So Jesus might be actually be impairing our skin and the resemblance of, you know, the people that were living in Egypt at that time. So you must actually understand these things. So, and you see also with these people, the African people or the Cushite people, you realize that these people, they've got a skill of the tolerance of religion. It's them who come up with that concept, who were able to live with other people side by side from other traditions and cultures and religions. Now, if you look into that, you realize that the model of what they actually have today, the Kushite and the African people, they had it a long time ago. Free religion. It's not a new thing. It is not a new thing at all. It's something that has actually been there. There's been tolerance, and mostly you see it when it got to do in the Bible with the people of the color, and you see it inherited in Israel. Israel inherited it through Moses, and in the tent there was a place for the foreigners, and when God spoke and Moses wrote about the foreigner, how to treat the foreigner, you know, how the foreigners are need to be treated according to God, and he actually gave it to the people. So the African is good. We don't need to actually feel the dark people are good. You don't need to feel really as a person who is unable to see yourself as in the power and the equal with other people, feeling that there is something that is wrong with you, or you are inferior. You are not inferior. You are God's image. You are a child. You are children of God, like any other people. Now, why did it actually happen that colonization came to Africa? What might have happened you look into that. Again, when you're talking about this, you see it in the Bible. You see nations and nationalities toppling each other in the Bible. You see even what seems to be the favorite nation of God. When they have sinned and they have forgotten God, things happen to them. They're taken into captivity, or some kind of nation comes and flatten them up, and they are left with a remnant, and they are taken into captivity, and they are made slaves, and they are changed, and they carry the culture from there, and then they come back again, and they rise from that culture, and they use it also, to rise and to become the people that they intended to be, and when God listens and hears that they actually do this and blesses them, they grow and become a strong nation. Why would it be something different for the African person? It does not happen to us because we were inferior in any way. I put it to you again. I want you to understand this. We were not inferior. We are not inferior. We are never even to be close to that inferior. It happened because of the subject that I spoke about, where we come to a point where we actually find ourselves going away from God, and things escalate into a point where God has got to find a way of bringing us back to Him, one way or another. So He cares for us. So we might have happened to see an indication, that it might actually mean that when colonizers came, and they came with whatever that we, the Bible, the gun, whatever people say, But I want to say to you, it happens to people, as I'm actually looking at the Bible in history, when it is put into perspective, that it is when people have started to take and go their own way, in forgetting about their Creator and God, that the nations, they become on top of you. It seems to me that it becomes all lost. The wisdom also goes away with the forgetting. Whenever you forget God, it's like that wisdom, goes away with you. With you, yes. It goes away with everything. It goes away with prosperity. All of the things that we spoke about, it goes away with righteousness. It goes away with blessings. It goes away with riches. It goes away with healing. And then it goes away with unrest, with rest. So, in other words, the 5 things that we spoke about, that Jesus brought for us, the great exchange, they go away. They are gone. Whenever the nation or the tribe or the people kind of goes away, the Bible says in Isaiah 59, it is your sins. When the people are actually under a lot of cloud of sin, something happens in the world. There's a change. It happened with the people who were living with Noah. It just happened that there was going to be flood, and God flushed them out, literally, and they were gone. We see with Israel, it's the same thing. The changing of empires that are actually sitting there in the story. You see Babylon, you see Romans, You see Medias and Pharisees, you see Romans, you see everything that actually runs. And it is the teaching that you should actually understand, that if you do not actually honor God, you're going under. As a nation, as a tribe, as a republic, or anything, if South Africa decides today that they're taking their own route and they don't honor God, I am telling you, they are going to go under. And it's partially what we have actually seen, but I don't want to talk about that. We're going on the other things that we need to be talking about. So bazalwane, kubalulekile ke uba sizijonge ezi zinto and say to ourselves, colonization is nothing to feel inferior about, unless you're still sitting in that sinful direction. It's going to get worse. But if you come back to the Lord, then you will realize that, good things will come, and certain things will actually, straighten up the way, and you're going to be in the right path. South Africa has now recovered a lot, and mainly, and if you want to realize this, if you don't want to realize it, you're still going to be in the dark. It came back mainly because Christianity built it up. There was first schools again. Civilization came in through the Christian people. Christian schools, and there was all of this. The people do not actually count those things. We got educated. We got our own pastors. We've got people who actually now sat together and they realized this thing that I'm talking about, and they spoke with the kings. And what we know now as the ANC coming into place, it was because of those people. Might be going away again, but it came as a result that the kings and those who were educated and were Christians then saw the need of going back and praying to God and saying, God, sifuna ilizwe lethu. You can even hear our national anthem, what it actually says. And you will realize that this nation was built on Christian roots. Or Enoch Sondonga, and many others. And you see the flock of pastors and reverends in the leadership of the ANC. And then you, even in our Xhosa background, you've got churches like Ohabe. That is the Ikawe Kahahabe. Our kings also at some point converted and they became Christians. And so as we were fighting, we were reconstructing the religious part of our side, and we are coming right with God. In the 70s, from that time, mainly in the 80s, we were led by pastors when we were doing march. Don't tell me about people who went outside and stuff. We fought here. We died also here. We were beaten here. We fought back, with stones and everything that we could actually find. We made this country to come to its knees. Silapa. And the Christian people, the Christians, they never actually left our side. I was not a Christian then, but I became a Christian in the process. But that is what I actually noticed, that when we were actually being beaten we went into the church halls. The churches opened for us up to make discussions as youth and stuff. And and they stood for this, Now, this is now the social gospel that we're talking about, that you need to actually understand. This you need to understand, colonization, um, it's nothing that we can actually take against God, but it's just something that actually happened. It happened for its own reason, but I think God made it a vehicle that brought us here so that to lift us to be in this standard that we are today. Well, not the verbal standard that is actually there, but to be lifted up, to be the people, ube kuhle, and that there is a great economy, there is people are flourishing, and there is the strength of the economy, and that people are able to live. But do not forget God. God will, if He is forgotten, He will bring us up one way or another to Him. So ndiyabulela ke bazalwane, ndizayibeka nje kuloo ndawo loo nto leyo, but I just want to say to you, there's more in you than what you perceive and what you are told. Just get out of the slave mentality. It's one thing that you need to fight against. Understand the strength that is in you, and understand that the vehicle actually came. You don't need to ride that vehicle every time because it's what you were used to as a child. Your father drove that. No, colonization, put it aside. Now take the freedom that you have. It is for freedom that Christ has actually set you free. We got this freedom because of the roots that we have in Christianity. I hear of any other people and people who actually went in exile, and this is when they were part of the ANC from other religions. I'm not fighting that, but I say the vast majority and the influence that we have actually got, that even got into the cultural, traditional things that are relating to how we worship. Christianity actually went through and it was accepted to the levels in which it was. And this is, I believe, what changed the whole scenario in our country. And so, in fact, it should be in whole Africa. So if you find yourself and and see yourself as a slave, you are going to suffer. But if you release and accept the fact that God has actually come through for us this time, and when a person says to you colonization, don't tell him that we're not there anymore. We are now in the freedom, and we cannot by any chance find ourselves abandoning the freedom that God has given unto us. I want to encourage you also to support the government and be an active Christian. We need you in politics. We need you in politics. We need you in the scientists. We need you in every faculty that there is of life. We want you. We want something that this country be ruled somebody who's going to state out clearly and say, I'm a Christian, who's not going to be dodging around or feeling inferior being a Christian. To be a Christian is a good thing. To be especially born again Christian, will make a difference in this country and would lift it up. So young people, old people who feel called into these things, reach out, go out there, be that. It is your calling. Do not hold back, but do not put God aside. Do not put Jesus aside. Praise Him in those courts and show us that you really believe. Siyayazi ukuthi you are not going to as it is our mentality that you are never going to see that other religions are not going to be tolerated. May God bless you. Thank you for everything. Santana Pekaya.